Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight, Dr. Valarie Tynes. She's a native of Fort Worth, Texas. She earned her Doctorate of Veterinary Medicine in 1987 from Texas A&M College of Veterinary Medicine, and she completed her residency in clinical animal behavior at the University of California, Davis. And she has done wonderful work for Fear Free over the years and has been a constant champion for us. So Dr. Tynes, if you'd like to take it away.
Thank you. Thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here, although I understand that what we're getting ready to talk about here is a subject that can be difficult, can be very challenging for many of you. But let's deal with it, right? Let's see what we can do to help clients better understand the pros and cons of declawing and how hopefully we can avoid having to declaw cats. So the first video is really just kind of for fun. I don't think any of us have any question about what we're dealing with here, right? The pet cat that lives in the home and unfortunately sometimes can cause damage to people's property that they do not appreciate. So I feel like we need to kind of start the conversation with the issue of our veterinary oath. And remind everybody, I'm sure I probably don't, but let's think about this and be ready to talk about this with clients when necessary. Maybe we need to have this framed on our walls a little bit more often in our clinic and remind people that we take an oath to protect animal health and welfare and to prevent and relieve animal suffering. And really importantly, and what I love, because this goes along with the fear-free mission, is this is about continual learning, continuously improving our knowledge and changing what we do as we learn, because fortunately, that's what we do in science, right, is we learn things. And I did graduate more than 30 years ago now, and we'll also remind everybody that I was in private practice or general practice for about 14 years before I went back and did my residency. So I absolutely have dealt with these issues. When I was in practice, I will admit I did declaws because at the time I didn't know any better. And I probably dealt with a lot of the same arguments that you struggle with now. But I want you to know I've been where you are. I'm not all ivory tower, but I do take this very, very seriously. And since a few years ago, I was able to get credentialed in the College of Welfare as well. I hope that shows that my feelings about animal welfare have just continued to grow and change the longer that I have done this job. The good news, what I want to start with, and that's why I kind of like my headline, this just in, there was a study that came out. I believe I downloaded this either today or yesterday, and I was like, wow, how timely. One of the biggest arguments that I know we face from people is that if you don't declaw these cats, they are going to get euthanized. That, in fact, we are saving lives when we do declaws. And I think other research, in addition to this, continues to suggest that that's not necessarily true. It doesn't have to be true as long as we do our job of educating clients. But this is pretty exciting. This study just came out that shows after I believe it's been 3 years, 2 to 3 years, since this, since British Columbia banned declawing, and they have been able to show that the numbers of cats in the shelters are not increasing, that they're not seeing increasing complaints from pet owners about cats scratching or being destructive. And so this right here, I think, kind of competes with a lot of the prior beliefs that we have held. So I think that's a kind of an exciting way to start off the talk. But let's do a quick run of, why cats scratch, because helping pet owners understand this is an important part of helping them make the choices that we would prefer they make. Helping pet owners understand that cats scratch on items in their environment not only in order to groom their claws, but also as a means of physical exercise and to mark their territory. So it's a normal behavior that all cats demonstrate. And in addition, scratching can also be what we call a displacement behavior, meaning that when cats get really excited, or sometimes when they play or when they're just very aroused, they may run to their scratching post, and you may have seen them do that. And in fact, in that first video, that's what those little kittens are doing to some extent. They're just playing with, clawing that piece of furniture they're sitting on. There's also the suggestion that when cats are anxious or stressed, they may scratch more. So we need to keep that in mind, that again, this may be an outlet that's common to cats when they experience a variety of different emotional states, in addition to being this important means of communication and self-grooming, self-care. Nevertheless, we do know that scratching items in the home continues to be a complaint, or at least has been an important complaint in the studies that have been done up until now, that tell us that, well, at least at one point we had that 60% of cat owners report destructive scratching as a problem when they go to relinquish to a shelter. So it's a very common behavior complaint when releasing to shelters. That as many as 86% of people, and this was in one particular study, that presented their cats for a declaw cited the problem of destructive scratching. So that's the primary reason that most people use for their cat scratching, not, that they're harming people, not that someone's immunocompromised, but simply that the cat is being destructive. And I think that's really important to keep in mind because we're going to talk about how to deal with that. In one particular study, 65% of respondents said that their cats exhibited inappropriate scratching behavior. And of those, 35% said that this happened multiple times a day. So clearly, scratching behavior can be a problem for people in their homes. And because of that, surgical declawing has become a solution that a lot of people, go to right away without really even thinking about the options. And the most recent study that was done looking at the percentage of cats that are declawed in the United States cat population demonstrated that about 24% of the feline population is declawed. And that'd be a nice study to redo sometime soon, because I suspect that it is decreasing. And one of the reasons it's likely decreasing is that as millennials and probably even Gen Xers begin to be the majority of pet owners, as baby boomers are going to start to decline, and you're going to see more millennials as your clients and with pets, this group has been shown to be much more concerned about their pets' welfare. Many of them are less likely, they just don't even think of declaw as a potential solution. So I think they're easier to talk to about this problem. And more of them appear to think of their pets as family members, as surrogate children, and again, are going to be very concerned about their welfare and making good decisions. And there's also evidence that they really want to be educated. They have an interest in understanding their pet's care and what is involved in their pet's care, and they want to hear from the veterinarian what to do to help their pet live the longest, happiest, healthiest life possible. So why not declaw? Hopefully, those of you that are attending, again, aren't here necessarily to be convinced that declawing is not the best option. Hopefully you're here because you already believe that and you want to help educate your clients in that regard. So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about here are things that I think should be shared with the average pet owner. And just as an example, I find that historically, many pet owners really do not think about what this procedure actually is. So being sure that they understand that declawing, this is not just a severe nail trim. This is an amputation of the last digit of every one of your fingers, okay? And for people who want to get all fours declawed, it would be like cutting off the last bone of every one of your toes. And when you put it like that, I think it's very eye-opening for people. I can vouch for this because even though now I admit it has been about 20 years since this happened, but I was doing relief work in a clinic where I overheard a receptionist explaining to a pet owner who was obviously inquiring about a declaw, telling them that, oh, it's not that bad. It's not a big deal. It's just like a really deep nail. It's like being quicked, but it's done under anesthesia, so it's not so bad. And that was pretty horrifying to me. Even at the time, I could not believe that somebody would or could downplay what is really a very serious procedure. So I think helping them understand the seriousness of that procedure is really important. Speaking of new data, a really interesting paper came out just a few years ago that also demonstrated the potential for the long-term pain that declaw can cause. And a lot of people, have quit even talking about the acute surgical pain because, right, we have pain relievers now that we did not have 20 or 30 years ago. And I think it goes without saying that any veterinarian that does a declaw knows the importance of using pain relief for that animal immediately, preferably before and after surgery. In fact, a lot are using ring blocks and a variety of different forms of analgesia. And that's great, but this particular study found that about 63% of cats in this population they studied had evidence of regrowth of that P3, that little piece of bone that's left in there, unfortunately. And that was correlated with increased back pain, aggression, and even urination outside of the box. And again, it should go without saying that if an animal lives with chronic pain, it is very likely to be more irritable and aggressive. And if its feet hurt all the time, that may make it unlikely to want to use typical, litters because that may be uncomfortable on their feet. Now, a lot of veterinarians, I hear, and I hear these arguments all the time, say that, well, this is all about surgical technique, that if you declaw appropriately, this pain will not exist. And again, there's just no evidence of that right now. In fact, comparisons between doing the surgery using a guillotine nail trimmer like this or actually disarticulating that bone with a blade show that cats declawed with that blade technique displayed more behavioral changes, such as less play and willingness to use their paws. People also compare to laser onchiectomy. So another technique is to use a laser to remove this bone. And again, proper laser technique would suggest that there's going to be less hemorrhage and less tissue, ischemia, and therefore quicker healing and should be less painful. But again, the results from the studies that have been done show that this is not always the case. Sometimes that post-operative signs of pain were, actually worse in some of these cats for whom we thought we were doing using a better technique. So technique may not be all there is to this. Again, when cats are declawed and they walk, it causes them to walk differently on their feet. it has the potential for them to suffer from chronic long-term discomfort that may obviously be a problem from a lot of different perspectives. So probably what you really want to talk about here are the alternatives to declaw. What can we help our clients with? How can we help them make good choices by educating them? Well, again, speaking from a historical point of view, the other options that are often offered, and I'm going to start with sort of the most basic, are, for example, nail trimming. So trimming the cat's nails more frequently and keeping them short, and suggesting that that may prevent the need for them to do as much scratching of furnishings. But we have to be honest and recognize that I think just telling your clients, oh, you just need to trim your cat's nails more often, is not going to go over well, because we know that trimming nails is challenging for pet owners. And if they take them to the veterinarian to have them done, that's, you know, time consuming and incurs a certain amount of expense, although I know people that will do that. But most importantly, it's probably not going to stop the destructive scratching completely. It may decrease the damage that the cat can do, but it's not necessarily going to stop the problem that is of concern to the pet owner. And so the main message I have about nail trimming is that this should be something every single new kitten owner is educated in regards to. So this should be a conversation that comes up every time you see a new kitten. And it should be with just that brief instruction as to how to habituate a cat to having their feet handled. And again, when they're kittens, it's so easily you find a favorite treat and you touch their toes and you give them a treat, you touch their toes, you give them a treat. And over time and repeated situations of doing this, you get to where you're manipulating the toes, you know, pressing the claw out, and you're giving the kitten treat. And it is not hard to, at the very least, teach a cat to not be concerned about having nails trimmed. And this can lead to a cat that is much easier to trim their nails. And with just a little bit of instruction and education. Obviously not the perfect or complete solution for every adult cat, but something that we should begin educating about more often. What about the little plastic nail caps? These, I know, were very popular. I found these very exciting when they first appeared, and I used them in my clinic to try to, again, decrease the incidence of people needing to declaw. The reality is there are a lot of pros and cons to these. They are not necessarily easy for the pet owner to apply by themselves at home. And in fact, they require that the nail be trimmed a little bit first. So if people can't even trim their cat's nails, what is the likelihood what's the likelihood that they're going to be able to put these on the cat? These require a cat to sit still and allow you to manipulate its feet. You put these on with a super glue type adhesive, and then the cat has to sit still for a few minutes for it to dry, at least partially, before they jump out of your lap. So if an owner can do this at home, that is fantastic. But again, the reality is a lot of people won't do it. And there was a time when people would bring their cats to me and we would have to sedate them and put these nail caps on. And the biggest challenge I found with that, even when people would invest in those, is that sometimes the cats would go home and chew them off. And they wouldn't necessarily last the 4 to 6 weeks that they are intended to last. They're supposed to stay on there kind of until the cat's claws grow out to a certain point. So again, I think it's wrong of us not to educate clients about this option. I think they need to understand that this is an option, but it may depend very much on the cat and the pet owner's financial restraints or just their time restraints as to whether or not they want to bring a cat in to have this done. One of the things I would remind you, though, is excuse me, that this could be something that you recommend for people who are very frustrated. Maybe they're at their wit's end thinking about declawing a cat, but if you could get them to try this, and if the cats would even wear it for a few weeks, that this could be used as a interim solution while a certain amount of management and training goes on. And we're going to talk about that next or in just a few minutes. Excuse me. So plastic nail cats, again, keep them as an option. But people have also always been told, well, give your cat a scratching post. And that's very much an oversimplified little bit of information, right? Because this is something else that we've learned a lot about in the recent years, when a particular survey study came out that asked people about their cat scratching behavior and what posts they were and what posts were used. And in this particular study, and it did include about 4,000 cat owners, what they found was that the majority of cat owners said that they offered carpeted posts, but the greatest number of cat owners that reported that their cats used the post reported that these sisal or rope-covered posts were the most frequently used. And I thought that was a hugely important bit of knowledge, because all you have to do is walk in a pet store or even go online, and what you see are lots of carpeted posts. These, fortunately, are becoming more popular. You're seeing them more, but 10 years ago, we certainly didn't see them as much. So it's really important that, number one, we make sure people understand that the substrate they offer their cat is important. And this can change a little bit as cats age. The other thing they found in this study was that cats, when they broke them down by age, cats that were under 9 years of age most often preferred the rope substrate, and carpet was the second choice, and cardboard was a third. But what we'll see is there's a little bit of change with age. But I want to talk about, again, not only what post we offer, but where and how. These are all issues that need to be covered to some degree with each pet owner. So let's talk a little more about what post we offer. One of the things they did find is that cats sometimes exhibited inappropriate scratching behavior significantly less often when they were offered a choice of several different posts, and that cats most often used posts that were over about 3 feet high compared with smaller posts. So little short posts and even horizontal scratching surfaces like this little cardboard thing, things that hang, like you see this example of the hanging types of posts, these were used less often in the study than were cats that were offered tall, multi-level choices. So keep that in mind, that the inappropriate scratching decreased as the different types or styles of posts increased in the home. So lots of choices, but the majority of cats seem to prefer the higher posts with multiple levels to the lower posts. What they did find is that cats that were over 10 years of age seemed to prefer cat trees with 2 or more levels as well. But they also, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Cats that were greater than 10 years of age preferred carpet more often than the sisal. So there was a little bit of change depending on age, reminding people we need to think about what cats experience as they age. And it may be that arthritis and other conditions associated with aging may lead to changes in what they prefer. So also, it was the cats over 10 years of age that preferred vertical posts most often, so simple vertical posts, and the cat trees with 2 or more levels came second. So the older the cat, the less they seem to desire those multi-level, bigger scratching trees, if you will. But otherwise, if you look at the population all, and when they look at it in all one group, they still found that the cat trees with 1 or more levels were associated with the least inappropriate scratching. So hopefully I explained that well enough. The next question comes up that we have to also help people understand: where do you put a post? It is not uncommon in my consults with cat owners to find out, well, the scratching post is, you know, in the basement, or even it's on the floor where the cat doesn't spend the most time. So people really need to understand that a scratching post has to be in an optimal location for that individual cat. And it appears that because cats really like to scratch when they wake up, that first putting it in places where the cat sleeps or rests the most may be a really good way to encourage its use, possibly near a window so that the cat wants to hang out there and probably rest there more often. That may be helpful. But in the study that was done looking at cat preferences, they found that just because scratching posts were put near the furniture did not, or the furniture that the cat was damaging, that did not necessarily decrease the likelihood that the cat would scratch on the furniture. So even though I recommend this frequently, if the cat has already targeted a particular place, by all means, start out by putting a new post there so that it's more convenient and hopefully encourages the cat to use it. But recognize that's not always going to be necessarily a solution for every cat. But I will come back to some other things that you can do to decrease the likelihood of that cat continuing to scratch on that piece of furniture. But where it is located is really, really important. Oh, by when, a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing here to say, oh, so when do they use it? But paying attention to when the cat uses the post and rewarding them for using the post can be very, very important. Again, in that study, they showed a significant correlation between the cats that used the post regularly and the cats that were reinforced with treats or, you know, rewarded or praised for using the post compared to those that were never rewarded for using the post. So again, encouraging clients to identify a treat that their cat likes and have it there handy for for them to give to the cat the minute they see it scratching can be potentially a very good way to increase the scratching behavior. The hows of getting the cats to scratch on a post, I still want to remind everybody, don't forget the catnip. So even though there is a percentage of cats, I believe like 2/3 of cats have the genetic basis, if you will, to respond to catnip. That means there's 1/3 of them that don't, approximately. So no, the catnip is not going to be a solution to every single problem or every single, destructive scratching problem, but we don't want to forget to try it. And that doesn't mean throw some on the post and, walk away and never replace it. You need to refresh it periodically because the catnip gets dry and dries out. And I have been told now by several people to remember that there is a difference in quality of catnip. And I think a lot of the catnip that we can buy in the store and stuff, it's probably really old. It may not have much of the odor left to it. So again, reminding people to at least try a good quality catnip on more than one occasion and give the cat a chance to, see if they're attracted to the catnip and if that will keep them coming to the post. And then the second aspect of this, and we'll talk about it from a basic behavior modification point of view next, but the second aspect of this is what can we do to make the cat care less about the furniture that they have been scratching? Well, remember what I said about this being a form of marking behavior. So one of the things that you may want to try is to clean the area very thoroughly with whatever cleaner is safe and appropriate to that piece of furniture. If you can use just soap and water, that's great, but any type of organic cleaner that is out there will likely, anything that breaks down organic molecules, is what I'm trying to say, will break down most of those smells. So if you clean the area and remove the current smells, that can be very helpful. And then consider applying Feline Classic Spray, because the Feline Classic Spray, if you recall, is the copy of the pheromone that cats leave behind when they cheek mark. So they're leaving this message all around that says, this is my safe place. And because it's safe, they shouldn't be stressed. They shouldn't feel the need to mark. So spraying it in the area that they are scratching may help, especially if that scratching is associated with distress and anxiety. And finally, and then I will definitely answer your question, I want to be sure y'all know about Feline Optimum. It's brand new. You're going to hear a lot more about it in the coming months, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but just be aware that it is out there. And in the first study that they did on it, one of the first studies, they looked at vertical scratching behavior, and it decreased vertical scratching behavior in this population of cats by about 73%. So again, it is well worth trying. And the only thing is it only comes in a diffuser right now, so people would have to plug in the diffuser. It doesn't come as a spray, but keep that in mind as an option. So somebody asked, how do you find a good quality catnip? Again, this is anecdotal, but I wanted to share with you this brand of catnip called Meowiwana, because I have had more than one person now tell me that this is a really fantastic brand of catnip. I think probably, again, the other thing is you want to look at where you get it and how fresh it may or may not be. I just suspect that, for example, when you buy the scratching post with a little packet of dried catnip on it, it might be relatively old, and it may not have the same effect that it would have if we could get some fresh catnip. Now, you also say you've offered your cat fresh stalks of catnip and they were afraid of it. So again, if you have a cat that's particularly fearful of novelty, that is obviously going to be a challenge. If I had a fresh catnip plant and the cat seemed to be concerned about it, I might try crumbling it up. So just sort of, grinding it up into little pieces or chopping it up and putting that somewhere that they like to investigate, seeing if that made it a little less scary. But then the other thing I probably should have added to this is there are other herbs out there that some cats find very, very interesting. So my brother and sister-in-law who have several cats and are big cat parents, they have used these toys they buy online that have honey, some type of honeysuckle in them. So try some of the other herbs and herbal cat products out there that might be appealing to different cats, maybe more appealing than just straight catnip. But yeah, and somebody mentioned on the chat, in case you didn't see it, that Many food co-ops have a bulk herb section where they may sell fresh organic catnip in bulk. And I think that's a great idea. Again, I think just there's the likelihood that that might be a fresher product. And let me come back and talk about Felis Scratch and Feloy Optimum at the end, if that's okay. I would love to talk about it more. And but let me move on and kind of get the whole picture out there, and then we'll come back to that. Oh, but yes, somebody mentioned valerian and silvervine. So those are absolutely two of those herbs that I'm talking about that I've heard, again, people have really good results with. So we need to just encourage people to be creative and try different things. And once they find something their cat likes, then use that to see if they can't attract them to the post more often. But this is the case regardless of what behavior problem I am talking about. There is a general rule of thumb to basic behavior modification in every circumstance with every animal. And it sounds simple, but I like to make things as straightforward and simple as possible. That doesn't mean it's always easy, but it is simple. So you start with these basic instructions, okay? People need to always understand that whatever we're dealing with, we do have to do something to avoid giving the animal the opportunity for unwanted behavior. And I know that sounds really hard, but, you know, my favorite example is, you know, how many people bring a new kitten home and just confine it to one room with their scratching post and their food and their water and their litter and a place that's relatively kitten proof, and leave them in there when you can't observe them, so that that kitten cannot develop that bad habit of scratching on your furniture. That's just one example. And it's the same principle as, you know, crate training a puppy, for example. We don't let a puppy roam our house loose and expect that we are going to keep it out of trouble. We wouldn't do that with a toddler. So I don't know why we think we could do that with a dog or a cat. So somehow you have to set this animal up to succeed. In other words, set it up to make the right choices and then reinforce the desired behavior. So again, take a picture of that if you want, whatever it takes. Remember those basic principles. And then, and I will tell you right here, I think this is a place where our technicians should be trained to have these conversations. As a veterinarian, I don't know how many of you here are veterinarians tonight and how many are technicians, but as a veterinarian, I get it if you don't have a lot of time to spend talking about this. Develop a handout. You know, we have some handouts regarding how to do this on the Fear Free website. So take advantage of these things and train technicians to have this conversation with owners. Because again, we can't change a behavior if we can't first stop the animal from practicing it or practicing the wrong behavior. We can't teach them a new behavior if they're continually practicing the unwanted behavior. And I hope that makes sense. So in other words, you can reinforce this cat every time you see it on its post, but if when you're gone to work, it's happily scratching the furniture, it is not learning that furniture is not where you want it to scratch. So again, we encourage people to be creative and do what works for them in their household, because not everybody wants to drape plastic over their sofa and their chairs when they leave for work. But this is actually what my brother and sister-in-law did for the first year that they had cats. They covered the furniture when they weren't there. They uncovered it when they got home, and were prepared to interrupt and redirect their cats if they were scratching on the furniture. But there are other things. Again, I love this sort of creativity. Hang an old blanket over your furniture, when you're not having company, if you'd rather do something like that. Or again, I thought this was really creative. The carpet, you completely changed the surface of the sofa, and this may or may not be something the cat wants to scratch. And this sort of applies to that discussion of, setting the scratching post in front of where a cat may be scratching. And I have a lot of pet owners say to me, well, isn't that just reinforcing him for scratching there? I'm like, he's already scratching there. It's the surface that is important, not just the location. If you can put a post here and you can get a cat scratching it, or as you see in this case, another type of scratching pad, if you can put something there and the cat begins scratching it and the cat becomes very attracted and again is reinforced by scratching that, there may come a time when you can slowly move that surface or that post or whatever it is to a new location. Again, slowly, maybe inches at a time until you put it in another place where you would rather have it, but hopefully after the cat has become very habituated to using it. And you still have to remember, we can't move it down to the basement. We can't move it to some place that the cat doesn't want to spend time or won't spend a lot of time. And of course, the last example here is your double-sided sticky tape. And the only problem I've seen with this is, again, I've seen this put on fabric surfaces where it does leave a mark that was very hard to get out. So just like with anything you're going to apply on your furniture, I urge people to try it on a hidden location first and see how that works. But that as an option to, again, change the surface so that the cat doesn't want to scratch on it can be very effective. But remember, at the same time, you must give them something that they want to scratch on. And then we have to say, well, okay, so you keep the cat from scratching on the surfaces that you don't want them scratching on when you're gone by covering them or something like that, or you can find the cat to one room with the things it needs. But you're home now. What do you do when you catch your cat in the act? Well, again, one of the most important things I think you can tell people is to absolutely not punish that cat, all right? And help them understand why. Help them understand that it's because scratching is a natural, very reinforcing behavior in and of itself. You're not going to punish it away very easily. What you are going to do, though, is teach the cat to fear you. And cats, even more than dogs, at least in my experience, are very sensitive to punishment. And if you punish a cat, you are going to destroy your relationship with them. And this is going to lead to a cat that avoids you a lot of the time, that just doesn't, want to be around you. And then they'll just scratch when you're not looking. So punishment is very, very dangerous, particularly in cats. Now, I should probably add, if it works for a client to use what I consider remote punishers, so maybe the little static electricity mats or the scats, the thing that bursts a spray of air at them when they go into a certain location, that is certainly an option. It's not my favorite option, but there is such a huge difference there that people need to understand. When you use those remote punishers, the action is what punishes, and it punishes consistently, right? So they learn, when I go here, this happens, right? And so they'll learn not to go there. It's much different from when a person punishes and the act of punishment is directly related to that person's presence. That is much more dangerous. So remote punishers can be useful, but I really don't see them as being easier to use or more practical for most people. Most of them are kind of, they're high-tech things people have to go buy, whereas buying a cheap plastic drop cloth is pretty inexpensive, and like I said, I think just as easy. So what you can do, though, when you catch the cat in the act, is distract it and or redirect it to some other activity. So again, if you know what your cat's favorite treats are, it can be rattling a treat bag. We all know cats that will come running because you rattle or shake the treat bag. You can then throw toys and treats over towards the scratching post where you want them to go, and praise them if they do it. But really, it needs to be distraction, even if it's just saying, "Come here, kitty, kitty, kitty." If you have a cat that's responsive to its name, you call it. But you do this in a happy, upbeat tone of voice. You do not yell at them, because again, that can lead to fear and avoidance. What we also want to be sure clients know not to do is they do not pick that cat up that's scratching, take it over to the post and rub his little feet on the post and say, "Here's what I want you to do," because that is very likely to be very unpleasant for some cats. It can be frightening. They are not going to get the point with you doing that. So again, there's a lot of risk to that. I would urge people to consider the distracting and the redirecting. So before I get into some of the other common client concerns, I'll take a minute and talk about the new Feline Optimum for someone who asked, because it is an exciting new product. It's a very unique Feline because it is a pheromone complex. So where all of other SIVA's pheromone products are copies of naturally occurring pheromones that dogs and cats exude, the Feline Optimum is a man-made, if you will, pheromone complex, and it is a result of the last 25 years of pheromone research where the people at the Semiochemical Institute have been building this library of pheromone components. And what they have learned, and this is again thanks to a lot of new technology that we have that we didn't have 25 years ago, they have learned to put it together in a particular complex that they know the cat receptors can receive. And so it's very novel and in that respect, and again, very kind of exciting because of the new technology. But the studies that have been done on it do demonstrate its ability to decrease numerous stress-related behaviors. So it decreased urine marking, it decreased inter-cat conflict in the household. And like I said, it decreased vertical scratching, and it decreased the hiding avoidance behavior that we often see in very shy cats. And it did that to a significant degree. In another study, they also compared it. They gave Feline Classic or Feline Multicat to cat owners to use for a month or 2 months, I think. And then they took those away and brought in the Feline Optimum. And those owners reported significant improvement in the cat's behavior, even above and beyond Classic and Multicat. So long story short, while this is not, I don't want people to think this is just like a combination of Feline Classic and Feline Multicat. It's not. It's much more than that. What I think will be nice for everyone and what will make it easy is for those households where, people struggle trying to determine, do I use Classic or do I use Multicat? I don't know. Maybe they have multiple behavior problems. Now they have one product they can choose. So it is available right now at most of your distributors. So, give it a try and let us know what you think. As far as Feline Scratch, again, I love hearing that people used it and had such great results with it. And to the same extent, it breaks my heart that it was discontinued. But honestly, the reason they discontinued it was because they weren't selling enough of it. So unfortunately, there weren't enough people like you that tried it and found it to be so successful. Again, very sad to me because I also saw and heard a lot of great success with it. I felt like the research behind it was very solid, but sadly, it did not sell enough for us to be able to keep it on the market. So that's why I'm hoping Feline Optimum will step in and make some difference for people. Yeah, very sad. As you can see, I'm very passionate about this aspect of feline welfare, and I hate seeing us lose something that can play such a big role. But it looks like a lot of people would buy it from Amazon, and then they would, like pet owners, and they wouldn't use it properly. And so then they would complain. So it didn't necessarily get a lot of good market support. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that one day we will bring it back or bring back something like that. But in the meantime, again, I'm hoping the Feline Optimum will kind of help take up where that left off. So, but thank you for sharing that it worked for you. All right, let's talk about some of the issues that people will often bring up as a complaint, about why they're wanting to declaw their cats. You'll hear a lot of pet owners say, well, all my other cats are declawed, so I feel like I should declaw this one too. Again, that's an opportunity for us to educate them and help them understand that cats communicate with visual cues. They're not always going around smacking each other. And any of you that have interacted with cats consistently know that, a cat will threaten with its claws in, just like a dog may snap. And actually using their claws is not something that they do regularly unless they are forced into it. So I think we can trust our cats, most of them, to interact normally and to not go around hurting other cats just because, this one has claws and this one doesn't. So again, I don't think that's a very good argument. I think it's one you can easily educate people and change their mind about. The next one that's so common I hear is people saying, oh, but, I have this member of my family or that member of my family, or even, it's myself, that's immunocompromised. So I want to remove the claws so I don't have to worry about, my cat scratching me. Oh, sorry about that. But again, what I like to be sure people understand is that removing the claws is not a reliable means of decreasing a chance of injury, okay? Again, if you think about it, and these are things you have to share with your client, that if a cat wants to scratch, if a cat is frightened or being aggressive for whatever reason, and it cannot succeed at doing whatever it needs to do with scratching, it is very likely to bite. And that's probably where that impression comes from, that cats who are declawed often bite more. Again, I think that depends on the client and the situation, and educating them about how to appropriately interact with a cat. A lot of people unfortunately, turn cats into biters or scratchers because of inappropriate play or inappropriate punishment. And again, those are just things we need to educate them about. But veterinarians shouldn't be advising declawing to protect human health, because the CDC, NIH, most of the other government organizations that are, involved with infectious diseases, even the Canadian Medical Association, as one example, do not recommend declawing as a means of keeping people safe. They know that is not a reliable means. So again, educate people, help them understand that there are other ways to keep a cat and not have to worry about injury, even if you're immunocompromised, without declawing them. So, and I left the rest open because I wanted to say, what are the toughest arguments that you face? What do you hear people saying and trying to insist upon getting you to declaw their cat? Are you hearing other things that are difficult to compete against, I guess? I would love to hear about it. So please share on the chat or the Q&A, whichever works. I'm not going to believe I answered every question, or I'm going to just worry that I put you all to sleep. All right. Well, any other questions? I'm happy to hang out here for a few minutes. Oh, apartment requirements. So there's a toughie. So someone has actually said that an apartment required that their cat be declawed in order for them to rent. That's pretty shocking and pretty horrifying, because, you know, I guess if we were talking about a completely furnished apartment, I guess maybe I can understand people, you know, wanting to have that kind of rule in place, but most scratching does occur on furniture. So if it's your own apartment, you know, it's not going to injure the apartment. It's going to be, you know, damage to the owner's own furniture. Very interesting. I guess I have to admit, if it were me, I would want to find out, okay, what's the name of that apartment? And I would want to call and really check if that's really true what they are doing. Because I would still worry that it might be an excuse people were using to try to get their cat declawed. But if that's something I would like to research, honestly, because that is a completely new argument to me. And I would be wanting to, I know that there's at least one state, and now I can't remember which one it is, but now I know why, that enacted a law that said people couldn't require declawing. And it may have been for rentals, something to that effect, but I don't remember now where it was. But that is, to me, that is a lot like a breed-specific legislation. We just need to be fighting against those things, because that is very much based on, you know, an uninformed stance. So Indiana, yeah, very interesting. Something maybe we need to maybe talk to the state VMA or someone like that and see if we couldn't get some legislation going to where they can't do that. That's a toughie. Minneapolis, wow. I'm racking my brain, and obviously if somebody's saying you know, the only choice I have are to live in these places, and they tell me we can't, you know, have a non-declawed cat there, then yeah, that puts you in a really tough situation. I understand. AAFP, you know, we should talk to AAFP and see if we can't get them maybe talking about this. And you know, I don't know, I may be getting you in trouble, Lexington, but I'm saying we should, you know, Fear Free is all about this new PAW project. We're involved with it. Let's talk to them and see what can we do to change laws like this. I would certainly be all about it. I'd be right up there with you. Hang on, looking at all the others.
I love it. We're having so much interaction here at the end. This is great.
Yeah, although it's very sad. I'm brokenhearted to hear some of these things. So a mother that said to visit her son for extended period of time, he required that the cats be declawed. Again, those would be people you really would have to collect more history from. Do the cats have a history of scratching people? Do we need them to have a behavior consult about how to control the scratching behavior, that sort of thing? That sounds a lot like some of the cases I encounter of aggressive dogs, where if we're not careful, people that are involved in that legal process, they don't know anything about animal behavior. And so we have to be willing to speak up and help, educate everyone and see if we can't make changes by speaking. You need to speak to the right people. Is that a lawyer involved in setting that criteria, or, where did that come from? But you're right. Cats for too long really have been sort of the second-class patient, but I think AAFP has done an enormous amount to help improve that. But you're right. I will also tell you another quick story that actually it's at this same clinic where I heard a receptionist, really downplaying the severity of a declaw. At that particular clinic, they would have specials regularly, usually like during the spring and summer around kitten season, where they gave a special price if you would have your cat spayed and declawed at the same time, or have it neutered and declawed at the same time. So again, they were promulgating that idea that these are just routine surgeries and that's just what you do. And we just have to keep changing that. And again, the beauty is that the Cat Fanciers Association and these folks, they don't allow cats to be shown that are declawed. And be sure that your pet owners you talk to, everyone you talk to understands that, declawing is banned in several other countries now. They do not accept this as routine. And we should, frankly, I think, be a little bit embarrassed that a country as advanced as ours in so many ways should be doing such a poor job of promoting animal welfare. It's the same thing with tail docking and ear trimming. I think that is slowly going away. I think there are more and more people. There are some of the corporate veterinary practices now, I know, that have just said, we're not going to do these procedures anymore. In many countries, you cannot show a dog that has had its ears cropped or its tail dogged. So we're changing it, but we all know change is slow. We just have to hang in there and not get too down about it. But wow, yeah, it happens in Nebraska too. So our work is cut out for us. I think we have to, again, as veterinarians, I urge you to speak up when and where you can and get involved with AAFP, get involved with the PAW Project, and let's see if we can't, through education, make some of these changes. We don't, any one of us want to be, tied up by a home invader and our cat not be able to scratch the rope part for us.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Tynes. That was a very wonderful lecture. It seems like we had a lot of really good questions and people were really enjoying it.
Yeah, I really appreciate the interaction. So thank you. And I'm sorry I don't have a magic wand to wave and fix every one of these problems, but you've given me some fuel that makes me want to go work on them. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Again, this will be recorded and put on the Fear Free Pets website if you want to view again or share it with anyone. We also have some additional webinars we've done in this toe amputation series, declaw series. We've had Dr. Robin Downing has done a couple videos with us. We did a whole webinar on paw reconstruction surgery with Dr. Martel Moran. So if you want to view those, just go to your webinar section on Fear Free Pets. And then we will be having some future content. We're going to have Dr. Lisa Radosta on to do behavior solutions for cats that are declawed as well. That one will be coming sometime in November. So thank you again, Dr. Tynes. That was absolutely wonderful. It's my first time getting to hear you speak, actually. So it was lovely. And you did
Thank you all very much. It was, like I said, I enjoyed it and I appreciate y'all staying up with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful night and a wonderful weekend.